Well, Lima Attorney Jerry Pitts is with us today, and he's always bringing up interesting cases and issues to think about. And thanks for joining us today, Jerry.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so this time you want to look at an over 100-year-old law in Alabama that has to do with taxing and the rich getting off and the poor having to pick up the slack, right?
That's it. And what's so amazing, I know people are going to say, why are you bringing up a 100-year statute? Well, the reason is because now California is sniffing around, and they're implementing some parts of it. Florida has attempted to implement 22 different parts of it in Florida, and some other states are now sniffing around a statute that Alabama created almost in late 1800s, early 1900, which says, this is the interesting part, that if you have a certain amount of wealth, which back then, the wealth was slaves was considered as property.
Oh, okay.
And all that. So the more property you had a cap on how much they could tax you. So you could never be taxed beyond what that amount is. And they said that statute is forever.
Really?
Forever.
And Alabama has not changed that?
No. They made 997 amendments to it.
Oh,
but it still says basically the same thing, that my wealth cannot be used against me. Therefore, I will still pay the same as I was paying way back in 1800s.
Okay.
So therefore,
who's picking up the slack?
That's the interesting question. What has to happen now, the state has to generate that money from other taxes because they can't get it from the property taxes. So ultimately, where it comes from is fees, court costs, traffic tickets, things of that nature. Now, which was surprised everybody, and it definitely surprised me, with road tide in Alabama and all that money, you would think schools would not be a problem. That is a problem in Alabama because the wealthy is not paying for it. And so ultimately, any monies for schools go to the wealthier districts, and the poor districts are the last to receive any funds. So therefore, kids in Alabama, in certain rural areas, have to bring their own toilet paper to school.
Really?
Isn't that something?
That's interesting.
And we're talking about this now in 2022.
Right.
So the courts are trying to make up the slack, but the courts are also have their own costs because the courts is trying to take care of the police, they have to take care of the hospitals, and all the other public administrative areas.
So is there thoughts or trying to change that? You know, you said there's amendments to it, but I mean, what about like changing it altogether?
The state constitution says permanent. They can't get.
Can they bring it up and change the Constitution? Are they allowed to do that?
Well,
for voters to say yes or no?
Well, the question is, who's the legislators listening to? Somebody who's bringing toilet paper to school, or somebody who has millions and billions of dollars? And when they're talking about roll tide.
Right, yeah.
And so the legislators are basically listening to the wealthy, which is often the case. But now California's jumped in the game. So, and Florida is in the game. And now the other states are getting in the game. That's why we got to be so conscious about what we vote for coming up in November. Be aware of what statutes are there. Don't ignore them and just think about the candidates. Somebody may slip something in on us.
Right, yeah, that's true. I mean, they want you to think of candidates and not issues. There's 2 state issues on the ballot right now, and I think a lot of people don't know that.
The candidates lay there with the issues, that issue 1 and that other about bonds and all those things. That's valuable. And, you know, I think at the next show, I like to kind of wind it up so people can understand what's going on a little better.
Okay, all right. Well, Jerry, thanks very much for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, don't go away. We'll take a look at medical news next.